If you missed your favorite show or interview, visit episodes on our website at theworldtoday.news. Our live shows are also on X, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Kick, and Twitch. Now there really is no reason to miss out on anything on theworldtoday.news.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. 3 Sudanese sisters, aged 9, 11, and 17, drowned after their overcrowded dinghy sank while attempting to reach Italy, German nonprofit rescue ship reported. Rescuers saved 65 people north of Libya, but found the girls' bodies submerged in water and fuel after evacuations. Their mother and brother survived and were taken to Lampedusa. The green dinghy, launched from Zawara, Libya, had been overloaded and partially deflated amid rough waves. Survivors came from Sudan, Mali, Ivory Coast, Ethiopia, and Eritrea. Over 30,000 migrants have died on Mediterranean crossings since 2014. Russia accused Ukraine of a drone attacks that set fire to a nuclear power plant in the Kursk region, damaging a transformer but causing no injuries. The blaze was quickly extinguished, and radiation levels remain normal, officials said. The IAEA urged protection of all nuclear facilities but could not independently confirm the incident. The strikes coincided with Ukraine's Independence Day, during which President Volodymyr Zelensky pledged resilience and called for a just peace. World leaders, including President Trump, Macron, and King Charles III, sent messages of support, while Norway pledged $695 million in new air defense aid jointly with Germany. U.S. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard said deep state actors have infiltrated the intelligence community, politicizing reports and working against the American people. In a Fox Business interview, she said entrenched groups inserted partisan views into intelligence, undermining constitutional duty. Earlier this week, Gabbard revoked security clearances for 37 officials accused of manipulating intelligence, including Richard Legett, Brett Holmgren, and Stephanie O'Sullivan. She stressed that intelligence must find the truth and tell the truth, adding transparency and accountability are essential to restore trust and focus on national security. Mobile phone thefts in London surged to a record 116,656 cases in 2024, averaging nearly 330 stolen daily. Metropolitan Police data, obtained by campaign group Crush Crime, show thefts have risen over 50% since 2017. Women were most frequently targeted, with 61,000 victims last year. Yet only 169 suspects were charged, with 7 let off with warnings. Critics say police focus too heavily on online speech, while organized crime groups on e-bikes drive the epidemic. Losses since 2017 total about £365 million. Officials warn broader violent crime is also rising. Lucy Connolly, a 42-year-old British mother imprisoned for a tweet after the Southport child killings, has been released after serving part of a 31-month sentence. She described mistreatment in custody, claiming prison governors were pressured for political reasons, and said she was denied fair trial conditions and coerced into pleading guilty.
Do you regret pleading guilty?
Yes. Well, yes and no. Again, because I honestly believe, had I gone not guilty, there's a strong possibility I would still be sitting in jail now waiting for a trial. Once they've remanded you, they're in no rush to put you through the system.
On Sunday on NBC's Meet the Press, Vice President J.D. Vance said the Russians have made significant concessions to President Trump in the negotiations to end the Russia-Ukraine war.
I think the Russians have made significant concessions to President Trump for the first time in 3.5 years of this conflict. They've actually been willing to be flexible on some of their core demands. They've talked about what would be necessary to end the war. Of course, they haven't been completely there yet, or the war would be over, but we're engaging in this diplomatic process in good faith. We are trying to negotiate as much as we can with both the Russians and the Ukrainians to find a middle ground to stop the killing. I think what the president has tried to do here is try to engage in very aggressive, very energetic diplomacy, because this war is not in anyone's interest.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
If you missed your favorite show or interview, visit episodes on our website at theworldtoday.news. Now there really is no reason to miss out on anything on theworldtoday.news.
There are now 8 billion people living on the planet. Is there enough room for all of us? Aren't we going to run out of natural resources? How are we going to feed everybody? These are not new questions. Doomsayers have been asking them for at least 200 years. In 1798, an English economist named Thomas Malthus wrote his famous essay on the principle of population. In it, Malthus claimed that population grew exponentially, while resources needed to feed that population grew at a linear rate. The difference between the two growth rates, he argued, must lead to starvation. Malthus was wrong, and not by a little, by a lot. As the population grew, food production improved, and so did almost everything else. Consider the life of a typical American blue-collar worker over the span of a century. Using a unit of measurement known as time prices, we can estimate the amount of time someone would have to work to buy a given item. Between 1900 and 2018, the length of time our blue-collar worker had to work to earn enough money to buy a pound of pork fell by 98%, to buy a pound of rice by 97%, to buy a pound of coffee, 94%. While people can't eat rubber, aluminum, or cotton, these commodities are valuable inputs in the production processes that impact the prices of goods and services, and hence the overall standard of living. Their prices fell by 99%, 98%, and 96% respectively, while population of the United States rose from 76 million to 328 million. Famines, which were once common, have disappeared outside of war zones. In much of the world today, it's obesity, not starvation, that is a problem. This relationship between population growth and abundance may seem counterintuitive, but it's true. Remember this chart that so frightened Malthus? The reality looks very different. The more people we have, the more abundance we have. Relative to previous generations, we now live in a world of superabundance, the term that my colleague and co-author Gail Pooley and I have coined and use as the title of our book. What makes this superabundance possible? The answer is knowledge. Thomas Sowell, the brilliant Hoover Institution economist, explains it this way. The difference in the standard of living between the caveman and us is not natural resources. The difference is knowledge. We have a lot more of it, and we use that knowledge to make things from the same natural resources that existed during the time of the caveman, but which the caveman could never have imagined. Let's look at something as simple as a grain of sand. It's been lying around for billions of years. Then, some 4,500 years ago, someone figured out that by heating sand to just over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, sand could be turned into glass beads, then glass jars, and much later, window panes. With every step of discovery, the value produced from a grain of sand increased. Today we use glass in fiber optic cables and computer microchips, turbocharging our productivity, thus making us much more prosperous than our ancestors. Counting the quantity of known raw materials, like Malthus and many other people have done, might seem logical, but it misses the ingredient that changes everything: knowledge. And new knowledge emerges from the human mind. A newborn comes into the world not only with an empty stomach, but also a brain capable of intelligent, potentially world-changing thought. So what really matters is not the finite number of atoms on the planet, be they of zinc or copper or any other element, but the human ability to combine and recombine those atoms in ever more valuable ways. Therefore, we can confidently say that economic growth is less about resources, which are limited, and more about knowledge, which is limitless. As the Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Romer put it, new ideas do not add up, they multiply. Here is another useful analogy. The world is a closed system in the way that a piano is a closed system. The instrument has only 88 keys, but those keys can be played in an infinite number of ways. The same applies to our planet. The Earth's atoms may be fixed, but the possible combinations of those atoms are infinite. What matters, then, is not the physical limits of our planet, but the human beings and their freedom to experiment and reimagine the use of resources that we have. Can we continue to live in a superabundant world? That depends on two components: people and freedom. The more people the planet has, and the more freedom they enjoy, the greater the likelihood that new, useful ideas will be generated to tackle our problems, whatever they happen to be. So, do you still think there are too many people? Or maybe not enough? I'm Marianne Tupy, Senior Fellow at the Cato Institute and co-author of Superabundance for Prague University.
Our mission at Pets of the Homeless is really simple, and that's to keep vulnerable people and their pets together when they're going through a tough time. Back in 2015, Pets of the Homeless started with a 20-kilo bag of dog food, made it into small packs, put it in a suitcase, and it was just me walking down the streets of Melbourne, one woman on a mission to make a difference. I would share the story on social media.
We've just hit 100,000 meals distributed today.
And the community really responded positively, and it just grew from there.
My name is Kent, and this is Hippo. She's everything to me. She's such a good girl. I got her at a time when I wasn't very stable. I'd come out of prison, I was homeless, but as soon as I got her, I just realised, oh my God, I can't let this dog go. And she's just my best friend. Hippo had a canine equivalent of an ACL injury. I knew there was something really desperately wrong. It was agonising seeing her suffering. My caseworker put me in touch with Pets of the Homeless, and Yvonne said that they could help, and I was just so overjoyed. I wouldn't have been able to get through that medical incident without their help. Like, it just would have been impossible.
That bond between us and our pet is very important. And when someone is going through a really tough time in their life, that bond becomes even more important. And that's what we're trying to protect at Pets of the Homeless.
Who's that?
My favourite quote is, I always wondered why somebody doesn't do something about that. Then I realised I was somebody. My intention wasn't to actually start a charity. It was to help. It was just putting one foot in front of another, and that's how we got to where we are today. We're now in a warehouse. We have about 150 volunteers. We provide on average about 60 to 70,000 meals every single month. We have a network of about 73 community partner organisations that we work with. We've also taken in hundreds of pets into our foster care program, and we've just reached 2.5 million meals distributed.
In the time that I've been volunteering with Pets of the Homeless, I've seen the community grow, numbers of volunteers, pet food packing, got a brand new van, and we can reach more community pantries and reach more people. The community, whether it's the volunteers who are packing the food, who are foster caring, they've got so much love to give.
I think Pets of the Homeless gives people hope. There can be a bit of judgment for people who are homeless and have a dog, but the reality is those dogs have got love and support, and it's so wonderful that Pets of the Homeless are able to help. It really makes a big difference in actual lives. It's really important work.
To the people who have supported Pets of the Homeless over the last 10 years, thank you from the bottom of my heart. There's so many kind people out there, and I'm just grateful for all of them. The work that we need to do is so huge and the need is growing, and we can't do it without the support of our community.
We're today's news talk, The World Today.
And once again, thank you for joining us. I'm Mike Ryan, and welcome to The World Today. Before we get into our next guest, we'll be talking about China's defence capabilities. Speaking of defence capabilities, we know that the US is ramping up its presence just outside of Venezuela. And the question is not if, but when will they make their presence felt in Venezuela? Now, I'll play you this clip and we'll see who's taking this seriously. This is Venezuela's army. They've just deployed 15,000 troops to the border as the US warships close in. Cam, if you could play Venezuela, please. So that's they're actually taking this seriously, and you just wonder how far this will go. Reports are saying that the US are very determined to do what it needs to do. Question is, what do they need to do? Is this to stop drugs, or is this to oust the government? I would think mainly probably the second one, but time will tell, and I don't think we'll have to wait for too long. Meanwhile, in Britain, a British man has been arrested at 4 a.m. in the morning, 4 a.m., in front of his cancer-battling wife for posting that he dislikes seeing Palestinian flags everywhere. This means that the UK has just lost the plot entirely. Cam, if you could play British, please.
Any events involved with Palestine, okay? The reasons why we did this is on the 17th of the 10th of 2023, on Bethnal Green Road at 10:04, you were witnesses saying, obviously, people, while they're over here, etc., we let them into our country, etc.
So, big deal.
Yeah, okay.
So, big deal.
She's on the television.
Saying it. Take him. Disgusting. You're disgusting. Absolutely. I'm a stage 4 cancer patient and I need to here. Make a scene of shoes. Make a scene. You're arresting him because he said something in the street about Hamas, a terrorist organisation.
You haven't been round the block. You don't know what you're talking about. John, have a custody. Did you hear that?
What?
Yeah, all those Palestinian flags in Bethnal Green Road, and you discussed it, absolutely discussed that. Why didn't you stop them, John?
Let's have it very, very clear. We have the freedom of speech. If we want to be against Palestine, we will be. If that's a problem, that's your problem.
Yeah, I
know. This is your freedom.
Look at the cops! Look at the cops!
Embarrassing.
Embarrassing. Because he mentioned Palestine. Getting arrested because he mentioned Hamas on Facebook.
Yeah, we're all against terrorist organisations. Sorry, unfortunately.
We don't like terrorists.
Yeah. We don't want terrorists in the country.
You can't have an opinion in this country.
You know there are Palestinian flags flying down Bethnal Green Road, and these guys.
There you are. Tell me that the UK hasn't lost the plot. And Starmer goes on about free speech. Truly, this guy, his wife's got stage 4 cancer, and they arrest him at 4 a.m. because he posted on Facebook that he dislikes seeing Palestinian flags everywhere. It's lost the plot. Maybe what we do need is a bit of a cleansing. Maybe China. Who knows? We'll find out, though, in a second. My next guest is Dr. Ladislav Zemenek. Now, he, by the way, PhD, is a non-resident research fellow at the China-CEE Institute of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences in Budapest and an expert with the Valdai Discussion Club. Now, he holds a doctorate in history from the Charles University in Prague, where he also completed his BA and MA in East European Studies. He collaborated with the Parliamentary Institute of the Czech Parliament and the Czech Academy of Sciences. In 2025, he was awarded the InteRussia or InteRussia Fellowship at the MGIMO University under the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And his work explores emerging trends in transforming the international order, liberal authoritarianism in the West, contemporary Chinese politics, Sino-Russian and Sino-European relations, Cold War history and Russian political thought. First of all, Ladislav, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
How would you describe China's military capabilities now?
As quickly developing, especially in the recent years under the President Xi Jinping, who who put a great emphasis on development of military and defense capabilities and the development of new, modern, innovative military equipment and reorganization of strategic command over the People's Liberation Army. And of course, it's also connected with some campaigns within the army, which is aimed against corruption cases and other misdeeds within this elite organization. So undoubtedly, the military capabilities of China are on the rise, but at the same time, it should be seen within a specific Chinese context. It's very important in order to avoid some misjudgments.
Many have said that if there's going to be a war, say between, in which we're looking at Taiwan for that matter, if there's going to be a war or stoush between the West and China, many have said that China doesn't really need even to fire a shot in many ways. They can actually disable America very quickly by the use of the internet and shutting down all of their infrastructure, such as water, sewage, electricity, communications, and so forth. And that if they did that, a great number of, I think it was something like more than half, I think it was close to 2/3, would perish within a month and a half. What's your views on that?
I think that we shouldn't see the Taiwan issue or question in such an alarmist way, because there's no doubt that Beijing, the mainland China, and the current government under the President Xi Jinping doesn't want to invade Taiwan, because it doesn't serve its development goals, its economic goals. It's very important to have this in mind. And if China is not provoked by some kind of aggression or attack from outside, Beijing is not interested in conducting such military operations. But at the same time, of course, as every military in the world, in every country, they want to be prepared for such worst case scenarios, but they don't want to be very assertive or aggressive in this regard, because they believe, or Beijing believes, that Taiwan is a part of China. Of course, it's the famous China principle, which is an inseparable or integral part of China's foreign policy. And at the same time, Beijing is convinced that time is on its side, and that Taiwan will be reunified with the mainland China sooner or later, but not necessarily by military means.
Yeah, with the Australia, US, England, Canada, and New Zealand, not AUKUS, but they did sign an agreement with some other countries that they recognise that Taiwan is part of Beijing. And so I always question the thought of the attack to protect Taiwan would be akin to protecting California from the United States as part of the country. This, and I probably think it's more scuttlebutt in many ways, waving the sabres from the West point of view, but it seems to be a great deal of hysteria about a stoush with China. And it's a bit like in the movies, the Russians are such bad people because they're all got, golden teeth and going to take down the world or whatever. It's, again, hysteria. And having been to Moscow, I can vouch that it's a magnificent country, and most likely the thing they want least is a war. And I would imagine the same thing with China. I mean, China are very, very enthusiastic in becoming economically superior or stronger. But, again, with many, I don't really see that meaning there's going to be a war, because that would defeat the whole purpose, wouldn't it?
Yeah, of course. No, I must repeat that China's primary goal is economic development. It's the foundation, or basis of the legitimacy of the Communist Party. So the last thing they would like to have is a military conflict between their country, China, and some other countries, not to speak about the United States or NATO. That's why they are so concerned about the signs of the proliferation of some kind of military alliances or groupings in the Asia Pacific region, because they see it as incompatible with their notion of common or indivisible universal security, which forms a basis of their approach toward international security. And it's similar to what we can observe in Europe, because the expansion of NATO eastwards has triggered the conflict, the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. And undoubtedly, it's true that belonging to NATO, being a member of such organization or a military alliance as NATO, improves the defense or the security and safety within the bloc, but it provokes and deteriorates the security conditions and situation beyond its borders. And we can observe the results right now in Ukraine. So China is very suspicious regarding the possible emergence of military alliances or expansion of NATO to East Asia or Asia Pacific region, and they are doing their best to prevent such scenario from materializing.
Because China is very its presence is increasing, and they're playing more of a growing role of development throughout the Asia Pacific region. Australia is very keen, very enthusiastic on having a close relationship with the US, but of late it seems to have sort of mellowed a bit, because it's whether our Prime Minister or our government is reading it differently. But once upon a time, if the Americans called for Australia or one of the countries to be its partner in defending which is like defending an invisible force at this stage, because there is no attack. But the role of the Chinese government in the Asia Pacific area, how do you see that at the moment? Is many of the countries do portray this as a threat to their sovereignty, but I don't see it a threat at all. I see it just as a company or a country developing its borders, doing good economic work, and so far I haven't seen anyone attacked or any country being taken over. It's all been done, handshakes and documents signed, and there's been no forced signing of any contract with China, such as the Belt and Road Initiative. So where do you see China at the moment in the Asia Pacific region? Countries saying that it could be they regard it as a threat. I don't see that. I see it just as an economic development and becoming stronger in areas that it wants to become stronger. We actually have at the moment a freeze.
Undoubtedly, it's true that some countries of the region perceive China as a security threat or a security risk, at least. But it's very much connected with China's rise as a major or great power. So it's, on one hand, it's understandable because China was weaker, and now China is growing and it's on the rise, which of course can provoke some suspicions or concerns about China's intentions. But it's obvious that China, first of all, is interested in promoting and cultivating, developing normal and mutually beneficial economic relations. It's again connected with the internal focus and priority of economic development and well-being of the population, and therefore Beijing is not interested in export, for example, of their political model to other countries, unlike some other Western countries which were or which have been involved in democracy promotion across the globe. And we should be aware of the fact that this kind of narrative, the narrative about the so-called China threat, is frequently spread by different networks of influence, which are linked to especially the former U.S. liberal establishment, and with what is sometimes called the deep state, and they tried to provoke other countries or push other countries against China because it fitted their own particular interest. But China doesn't interfere into internal affairs on the condition that China's core interests are targeted. Of course, if some other country want to recognize Taiwan, for example, as an independent sovereign state, then China reacts very assertively or aggressively because it targets its core interests. But it's understandable. But if such interests are not, or unless such interests are targeted, then normal cooperation, normal pragmatic relations are possible, and I believe that both sides can benefit from such kind of partnership.
It's been sprouted that 2027, when I think it's the next election in Taiwan, is going to be and ex-military is saying this. Commentators are saying that this is when there will be conflict between China and the West, or in particular the US. And that's when the election is being held. The other side of the coin, because they're saying that China will move in and they don't want an election. On the other hand, though, the West would most likely not want, or the Americans most likely not want, the election to swing so favourably towards mainland China or Beijing that there is no conflict. Is the West, do you think, fearful of the next election, the alliance with China becoming stronger? And if you look at past elections and look at past performances, there is not a great aversion to mainland China. So the bond between the two I can't say governments or two countries, because one is belonging to mainland China, but the two governments, the bond is actually growing stronger. And if you look at South Korea also, Republic of Korea, the new government there, they are more favourable towards having a stronger relationship with China and also North Korea. So the same thing with Taiwan. Do you see a stronger relationship after the next election forging ahead, which the West does not want at all to happen?
I think that the West is afraid of many things, not only of the upcoming elections in Taiwan, but undoubtedly, the Western countries don't want to change the situation in between Taipei and Beijing in such a way that the Taiwanese authorities would make some rapprochement with Beijing. I think that the opposite is true, that Western countries mostly, or at least some of them, are interested in provoking tensions between Taiwan and mainland China, and can be concerned by the fact that their or the plans regarding possible expansion of military alliances in the region, like AUKUS or even NATO, are not materializing at the moment. And it seems to me that the opposite trends can be observed, because if we have a look at the NATO's Hague summit, which was held in July this year, the crucial in Asia Pacific partners of NATO, like Australia or South Korea, representatives of these countries refused to attend the summits, which sent an important signal to NATO establishment or NATO allies that they are not in favor of provoking tensions or arms race in the region.
Mm. And let's go back to the point before that that it was a military think tank that came up with the idea that if China was to have a stoush with the United States, it really doesn't have to fire many shots at all. The government now, they've had a change of government with South Korea and also Japan's less inclination to become part of a stoush. How does the change of government, both with Japan and also with South Korea, how would that affect the strength of the West or the alliance with the United States?
Yeah, undoubtedly, it's connected or interconnected, because the United States and leading European powers have a strong interest in developing close ties between themselves and the so-called or liberal, what they perceive as liberal democratic allies in the region and across the globe. It doesn't target only or doesn't include only the Indo-Pacific region, and of course every change in the political landscape in those countries can affect their relationship with Western capitals. So of course they observe or they pay attention to the internal processes in the Asian countries, and to the extent possible, they interfere in internal political processes so as to achieve positive results from their point of view.
Mm. And just finally, Xi's leadership, secure, or is he on tippy toes, as we would say? You often hear reports, again, this is just from legacy media in the West, which is not slanted at all much, but the leadership of Xi, is he things swimmingly going well at the moment?
It's true that many Western commentators and analysts have recently commented on rumors and speculations that Xi Jinping's leadership is declining, and that the president or general secretary of the Communist Party is losing his power. But obviously, these are only speculations and without any evidence, because if such commentators, for example, point to some staff changes, personal changes within the military, it doesn't indicate that Xi Jinping, as the head of chief officer of the army, is losing power. No, it rather the contrary, that he's able to promote and advance his will and interests within the military, not the contrary.
Mm. Yeah, I think a lot of the commentary from the West it's I won't even say magnificent, but it is propaganda, and it's what nations do. I mean, no one's immune from this, but it is propaganda, and sometimes it would be very nice to actually have some media telling the truth instead of doing what the government says they need to say. Ladislav, thank you very much for your time. If somebody wants to find out more about what you do or how to support you, how do they do that?
Okay, it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
And do you have a website, or do you have what's your handle on X? Do you have anything like that at all? So we could.
I'm on Western social media like LinkedIn or Facebook and Twitter. So those who are interested in my analysis, they can find me there, or also at Academia Edu and other media. And I also publish articles in Russia Today RT, so in English. So I think it's available to international audience. And I would be happy if the people are interested in my work, of course.
Yep. And I'm a great fan of RT. I think they are a very good news source, and I enjoy them very much. So thank you very much for your time, sir. This is The World Today. Coming up next, we'll be talking vets here at The World Today.
Hey there, I'm Lance Bass, and this is CHIP. For more than 100 years, American Humane has been on the front lines protecting animals in times of crisis. From Pearl Harbor to 9/11, the California wildfires, and the coronavirus pandemic, American Humane Rescue has provided life-saving assistance for animals in virtually every major national disaster. If you're anything like me, your pets mean the world to you. And if disaster strikes, you want to keep them safe. To prepare for an oncoming disaster, ensure your pet has secure and up-to-date identification. And if you must evacuate, remember to take your disaster preparedness kit with you. To learn more about disaster planning and how to keep your best friends safe, please visit AmericanHumane.org.
G'day, Troy Casadale here. I've been travelling around this country playing music for more years than I'd like to remember. I've spent a lot of time on stage, but I reckon I've spent more time on the roads getting to gigs. And honestly, I've seen worse behaviour on the roads than I've seen at any concert of mine, and often from people who have years of experience behind the wheel. It's probably been a while since a lot of us have really thought about our driving, so take a sec and think about what you can do to help keep yourself and others safe on the roads. Us mob are almost 3 times more likely to die in a road crash than the rest of the population. So let's change that. Drive safely. Don't get distracted by the phone or others in the car, or get hot-headed or any of that stuff. You wouldn't do inconsiderate things outside a car, so why do them in one? Don't let a car change who you are. Safer driving starts with you.
Telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
And my guest now, after talking to our last guest from Hungary and Prague, Roger Meacock, MRCVS, is a pioneering British veterinary surgeon with over 25 years of clinical experience, known for his integrative and forward-thinking approach to animal health. He specialises in cutting-edge and natural therapies, combining conventional veterinary medicine with advanced bioenergetic and non-invasive technologies. Roger is also a vocal advocate for medical freedom and informed consent in both human and veterinary care. His work challenges orthodox practices and explores safer, more sustainable solutions, making him respected and sometimes controversial in this field. Roger, thank you for joining us. I just want to read you a couple of posts, one from Peter McCullough and one from Dr. Lynn Finn Durella. Peter McCullough says, COVID-19 replicon samRNA injections induced severe blood abnormalities in 93% of trial participants. Now, this may be the most acutely toxic COVID-19 vaccine thus far. LMP-NCoV saRNA-02 vaccine, which is a self-amplifying ribonucleic acid vaccine encoding the S-glycoprotein, which I'll ask you to make sense of that in a second because I have no idea. And the mRNA platform from Dr. Lynn Finn Dorella says, is just their stepping stone. Wait for the saRNA shots that currently are in Japan and the UK. We need to stop gene therapy for being passed off as vaccines. Could you just give us your thoughts on that and tell us about your paper on PCR that has been published and why it is important? And thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Mike. Good to see you again. Yeah, I mean, I echo what their concerns are regarding the self-amplifying RNA jabs. I mean, I refuse to call them vaccines because they're gene therapies, as one of your commenters has pointed out. So obviously, when you've got the self-amplifying ones, then what's happening is the body's actually replicating the RNA element as well as the protein element as the next step. So they, in theory, put less of the RNA into the body, and then the body replicates that. But there's no real control on how much of that is going to be replicated. And then when they put the RNA in the COVID jabs in the first place, without them being self-amplifying, the body then produced this unknown quantity of spike protein. So we've got two stages of amplification going on in the self-amplifying jabs, which obviously we get an exponential rise in what's ultimately being produced in the spike protein for the COVID jabs, or some other protein for any other pathogen that they're trying to protect against. But they don't check what action these proteins have in the body to make sure that they're safe. And my big concern is that it is known that viral proteins can cause prionogenesis, which is the formation of prions, which are infectious proteins. And people in Australia, I'm sure, heard when we had BSE, mad cow disease, in the UK in the 1990s. And so if they start giving these self-amplifying jabs to the livestock, the sort of volumes which they would be giving them would mean that it's probably only a matter of time before a protein is generated that could be potentially prionogenic, and then we get prions into the meat. And because in a lot of species the time from when they're sort of animals are hatched or born to the time of slaughter is quite short, they wouldn't necessarily have time to manifest a mad cow or a mad cow-like disease themselves. And so we wouldn't really get an advance warning like we did with the cows that there was a problem which could potentially then be passed on to humans. So we could potentially have prions being introduced into our food chain, and the first we would know of it was when people started seeing symptoms in people who'd had it. And actually the mRNA itself can be prionogenic. So, as I say, when you're jabbing millions of animals and birds potentially, then this is an existential threat to our food supply and to us as a result, because prions are almost indestructible. They can't be killed by heat. Even an autoclave between surgical instruments won't neutralize prions. So there is a real threat. And if they get shed into the environment, because we know shedding happens as well, if the prions were to go into the soil, they will go into the soil fauna, but also potentially plants can uptake these prions in their roots and redistribute them to the leaves. So if any of your viewers are vegan and vegetarian and think that this isn't a problem for them, well, I'm sorry, but it is, because if plants are going to start uptaking prions and redistributing them, then nothing is safe. So this is hubris and arrogance to the nth degree, to think that we can introduce biological materials into the body which are completely different from the old style pharmaceuticals, which were just a simple chemical. Once you start introducing something which has a biological activity, we really don't fully understand the full ramifications of it, and I think it's a very serious threat.
It's almost like the Frankenstein theory, or what's the word? Just Frankenstein, because here we have scientists playing around with things they don't know the end result to. In the old quote, what could possibly go wrong? Just say the worst case scenario, or which is just probably reality, because shedding actually happens. So if it is ingested in the entire food chain, what does it do to going to that the next step? What does it do to humans?
Yeah, we had new variant CJD in people who'd eaten beef that had the prions in that. So, they get neurological problems. So it'd be like Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. I mean, not all prions will cross species, thankfully, but the more we do it, the more there's a greater risk that you could produce what's called a super prion, where there would be no species barrier between them. And this is one of the reasons why I wrote a paper about PCR testing, because we've got to go back a stage, because the danger is when animals get tested with PCR in a clinical situation which isn't appropriate use of it. And so then something like the World Health Organization in a pandemic treaty situation could mandate veterinary interventions as well. And a lot of people don't realize that the World Health Organization has a One Health policy, which means they can potentially interfere with veterinary matters as well. And so at the beginning of the year, when certainly in the USA they were starting to test cows for high pathogen avian influenza, and we were starting to see it happening and spreading in the UK as well, I sort of got concerned that there was maybe an agenda going on. And so we've all known for a few years that PCR testing shouldn't be used in a clinical situation, but I thought it was important to get it on the record, and so I wrote a review paper of PCR, and it's now been published by the Journal of Independent Medicine. So those of us who are warning about the use of PCR in these clinical situations, we can no longer be accused of being conspiracy theorists, because now there's a paper, it's been peer reviewed and it's been published, and it basically says that PCR is for use, or was developed for use in a laboratory situation where you know what you're looking at and you know what you're looking for. You're looking to differentiate between two known sequences of nucleic material, and yet when we're using PCR in a clinical situation and swabs are being taken from animals or people, we've got a microbiome which contains literally 10 times more cells and more organisms there, so millions of times more organisms than just us. And unless we know the entire genetic sequence of all the organisms, we can't then differentiate between them and PCR. And so something comes up with a positive on the PCR test, and it's automatically identified with what it says on the box, and there's no proof that organism was what they think it is, and even if it was, no proof that it was infectious or it hadn't already been dealt with by the immune system. So I think I'm trying to try and get a movement together, and we're going to try and form a World Council for Veterinary Health to try and flag these concerns on an international level more widely, and if we can sort of get the PCR recognised for what it is, then there's less of a handle and a leverage to try and get these self-amplifying RNA jabs, but also we're trying to do some work behind the scenes to try and reduce their authorization or stop their authorization before that happens as well. Although unfortunately that's already happened in pets, primarily in the North America.
Yeah, tell us more about that. I mean, because I love animals, even though I lived on the farm. It's funny, as I get older, I realise how cruel we were and how we're supposed to be becoming more sensitive or more kind as you get older. And I look at, because I think animals are magnificent creatures, and they are creatures of God. But I look around at government, and I look around government and medical authorities. Their approach to the human or their approach to animals is basically the same now. It hasn't got much respect from those organisations. How do we change that? How do we say enough's enough? Because what you're doing is you are creating, which could one day be, because they don't know the end result, you are creating a magnificent doomsday machine. Because once you get rid of the food, what do you do?
Well, absolutely, precisely, exactly what you're saying, Mike. And they're also, not only have they got self-amplifying RNA now, they're also developing what's called trans-amplifying. So they're even taking it to another level. So they're not looking at stopping these developments. And although Robert F. Kennedy has withdrawn a lot of research in the USA into the RNA platform, it hasn't been stopped for the self-amplifying or other aspects of it. So we are potentially facing these issues. So we do need to get them stopped. So if there are any other veterinary surgeons who are watching your program, I'd encourage them, who are also concerned, I would encourage them to get in contact with me, and we can try and work together, because obviously it's not just what happens in our own countries that's important. With the way food produce is shipped around the world these days, we might stop it happening in our country, but if it's going to go ahead in other countries and that food produce is going to come into our food chain from outside, then we're still facing the same problem. So, and once the environment's contaminated, it's contaminated, and we don't know even whether they could be spread by water, by rain, even. With the shedding, we know microplastics go all around the world. It concerns me, the hubris and the arrogance that we're expressing, and of course it's all being money driven. So we've got to stand up, and I would urge farmers, find the paper, print it off, and if the government vets start turning up at your door to try and say they need to do PCR testing, then sort of ask them, what are the false positives, what are the false negatives? Because when you've got a disease of low prevalence, which, for example, bird flu in cattle is going to be low prevalence, then if you get a positive result, it's highly probable, close to 100%, over 90%, that result is a false positive. So, I would say to farmers, I would encourage them to arm themselves with a paper that says, look, this paper says these tests are, unsafe in terms of what they're going to potentially show. And I think farmers have an obligation to look after their animals to the point where that means not subjecting them to testing, which could have serious consequences for them without good notice, and without good reason. So, the other concerning thing that's happened over the last few years is this idea of asymptomatic disease. Well, I'm sorry, if you're asymptomatic, you don't have it, or your immune system's already coping with it, and so it's not a problem. So we've just got to introduce some common sense and practicality. And I'd urge any clinicians watching as well, think carefully about what tests you're using, because you have an obligation to your clients and your patients to make sure that if you're going to go ahead with any procedure, it is valid. And that's really, at the moment, that's all we can do. but we just got to keep vigilant and try and stop these things before they move into the food chain. Because I say they've gone into pets in North America. There is rabies, self-amplifying jab in Canada. There is a dog coronavirus, would you believe, one in North America, and a cat feline leukemia virus one in for cats. And they're being quite sneaky because they're changing the name of them. So they're calling them RNA particle vaccines, so that it's not obvious to people what they are. But that is what they're doing. So yeah, we've just got to be careful.
I just when I talk to many scientists and people like yourself, and just human doctors, and government people, and the world, I have to tell you, what we have at the moment, and all these little bits, but we'll have a terrible world. We'll have because we have the giant data centers which they're just sucking up all the water and the energy, and towns are finding very hard to survive. We have talk of military action around the world, and that itself is it's almost like a doomsday wish from some people. And then we have the medical side of things, and the idea of shedding, I think is repulsive, because what they're saying is whether you want to get that shot or not, you're still going to be impacted before too long, unless you lock yourself into a room. But if you lock yourself into a room and you decide to wolf down something from your local supermarket, you can still very well get sick because they've poisoned the actual food supply, which impacts human life and animal life on this planet. And before too long, you're going to have you often picture these wastelands. This is what we're going to have. And people think that we're standing on the top of a building being stupid. We're not. It's the way the world is going right now. Does it worry you? I mean, just dealing with farmers, you can see what's happening. They want them out. They simply want them out. You're going to have these great conglomerates plonked all over the place, doing what they wish to do with our food supply. That must also worry you.
Yeah, absolutely. No farmers, no food is one of the slogans being used in the UK. But the other one is farm to fork. So, I would encourage everybody to find their local farmers, talk to them, see how you can buy your food direct so that you at least know where it's come from, and make them aware of these problems. Because trouble with a lot of farms is they work so hard from dawn till dusk, as that they don't necessarily have the time to catch up on the sorts of things that we're discussing. And when their vet turns up on their doorstep or on their farm, they believe what they're being told, because what choice do they have?
They have no choice.
So we've got to try and educate our farmers, and we've got to obviously then encourage them to supply direct, which will give them better prices, and get people to buy direct as well, and sort of take control of our food supply. And we've certainly in the UK here, we're down to something like 40% food security. So as you say, this is a part of a much bigger agenda. And certainly in the UK, we've got documents indicating that they want to take food consumption, meat consumption down to zero, and dairy consumption down to zero. They think they can get meat consumption in the UK down to 16 kilos per person per year by 2030, which is, ridiculous. So yeah, food is absolutely under threat. They're looking at introducing these sort of warehouses of vertical growing, and even the supermarkets here are talking about, they've done their future plans, and they say farming will disappear, and they will have novel sort of jellyfish or something to meet, algae or something to replace it all, which doesn't sound particularly appetizing. And
delicious.
I think it is just ultimate insanity, but it's all tied into climate. That's the justification for it. So that's the other thing that we need to call out for what it is as well. I came across some information the other day, which I don't think people know about, which is there is a ceiling above which CO2 can't cause any further warming on the planet, and we've already reached that point. So increasing CO2 will not increase the planet any further, because we're already reached the saturation point where CO2 can cause warming. So again, all this expenditure in that direction and using farmland for solar farms and wind farms, which don't work. And obviously you've got your great Malcolm Bendel in the US, in Australia, who's developed his thunderstorm technology, which is looking like it could be developed further and help with carbon. Not that it's a problem, and fuel economy and everything as well. So there are other solutions, and I think we've got to keep positive to that. I think in Canada they're also experimenting with aerosol RNA as well, and in the States spraying it potentially on plants. I mean, they're determined to get it into us, and a bit of me is wondering whether we're trying to change from being an industrial military complex based fiat system to some sort of medical pharmaceutical based system. And obviously if you just treat the people who are ill, then you've only got a limited number of people you can treat and make money from. But if you push the whole vaccine idea, then all of us become potential patients or victims, whichever way you look at it. And if they need a bit of a boost, in the past they'd have had a war. Next time they'll have another pandemic and issue another vaccine. So I do think there is a much bigger financial and global agenda behind this all, which is I think we just got to be aware of it and talk about it and discuss it. And I think it'll ultimately fail, but we've just got to fight this fight, because it is a serious one with the mRNA. I think it really is an existential potential threat, and we've got.
I think it's almost the ultimate doomsday machine. You can't get away from it. It's just a matter of time before it grabs you by the short and curlies. But I do have just as I wind this up, I've gone way over time, but I find all this fascinating but terrifying. But I stick to the, much to my wife's horror, I stick to the Scottish medicine and a couple of whiskies. I mean, truly, nothing will live. Including myself. But it works well so far. And I think, truly, I think we need a dose of some reality, and I think we need to stop trying to become God. And again, we could have other discussions on why we are taking this path. Why do we want to become, godlike creatures to create life, whereas for millions and millions of years we've gotten by pretty well, and we don't need to do that. There's a spaceship on its way apparently, and it's 150,000 miles an hour, and it's going to plonk itself outside of the Earth, they're saying, in the next year or two. Could you imagine, though, their report, this, if it's true, but and who knows, but this spaceship would be their report on planet Earth. They've been drinking some Kool-Aid or doing something because they're running around trying to change themselves. And I think we are in a terrible spot. I think governments around the world, doesn't matter where you are, whether it's Australia, the UK, Ireland, the US, most places, I think common sense is a thing of the past. And once upon a time, we would have smacked those people and said, go away and grow up. Now, those people who we said, go away and leave us alone, they're our government, and they can do what they want. We can complain, whinge, do whatever we want to do. They're going to do. They're going to go from A to B, B to C, C to D, and it may take them a bit longer, but if they want to do something, they're going to do it unless people stand up and say, enough's enough. I'm as mad as hell from that movie, and I think we are in trouble. Look, pleasure chatting with you. You've given me an excuse to have my scotch tonight, I don't need much of an excuse. Maybe one day you and I can share a whiskey or three. Roger, thank you very much for your time. If somebody wants to find out more about you, how do they do that?
I've got a website which is naturalhealingsolutions.co.uk. I'm also on Facebook. And I say, if we've got any clinicians, sort of veterinary clinicians who are interested in becoming part of the World Council for Veterinary Health, which is sort of a parallel of what Tess Laurie has done on the human side, then please get in contact with me, because we are looking at setting this up now, because I think we need it as a platform because of the implications that we've got for human health as well.
And I also think we need to get involved in that too. I mean, it's all very. I was talking to a guy yesterday about Gaza, and he actually bought the boat, the Hundullah, and they sailed there. And so words, they're okay, but they at the end of the day, words are cheap. I think actions are very important. So I think you and I will chat. Jen will chat with you, and let's try and get more involved in what you're doing, because I think it's exactly what planet Earth needs at the moment, and a good dose of common sense and getting back to what nature wanted us to do in the first place. Roger Meacock, thank you very much for your time, sir. This is The World Today.